So just to recap very quickly, we're speaking about now the interaction between the divine soul and the animal soul. Previous chapters spoke about each of those two souls that we each possess separately. The animal soul has animalistic instincts. It also has no self-control whatsoever. It's impulsive as could be, like animals, and desires lowly, materialistic stuff. The divine soul has that ultimate self-control, and it desires heavenly things, heavenly desires. Now, they both inhabit us, and they speak to each other all day long. Each time we face a dilemma of any sort, the animal soul has its voice, and the divine soul has its voice. Now, this chapter, what's special about this chapter, chapter 9 again of the Tanya, is that it gives us the tools on for knowing how to interact with both and give each of them their voice, so that the voices of the two together are channeled in the best of ways. Because the animal soul is not necessarily evil, doesn't have to be completely obliterated. The animal soul has some good elements to it. You know, the animal soul wants to eat. Is it a bad thing to eat? No, but it depends how we eat, what we eat. The animal soul wants to sleep. The divine soul doesn't need to sleep. Is it a bad thing to sleep? No. But again, it depends on how we sleep, for what purpose do we sleep, and so on and so forth. So the animal soul must have a voice too. And here in this chapter, what we're studying is that there is a way in which these two souls can interact that is not just effective and meaningful, but is, I would say, the ultimate way to live. By blending the two together, ensuring, of course, that the divine soul is in the driver's seat, but without it eradicating the animal soul, because the animal soul also has its own voices that must be heeded to. Now, to be more specific, what we were speaking about just last week was that that mode of response, right? Very often, I think in modern day language, we would speak about the difference between responding and reacting. I'm sure you've heard of it before. Reacting is an emotional response that doesn't come with thought, and very often is very boisterous, and not only boisterous, but it's also very often misplaced, and therefore can be destructive, right? You have so that's one. Well, we can develop this idea. The other one is responding, and this is what the Tanya is speaking about. Responding is when I respond to an event or to an outside circumstance, specifically, first and foremost, through the mind, not through the heart. And that's what he was saying here. That first I have to dissect what just happened with the mind. Why? Because first of all, the mind is a cold world. It's an intellectual world that will enable me to put things into perspective. But secondly, the mind, and this is on a deeper level, a mystical level, as the Tanya says, that's where the divine soul resides. Doesn't reside in the heart, resides in the mind. And resides in the mind because God wants us to use the mind first. The main difference between the divine soul and the animal soul is that the divine soul thinks. Animal soul doesn't know how to think. Divine soul thinks. And that's the best way really to respond. That's how we can respond, not just react, as we mentioned. You know, we may have spoken a few weeks ago about 3 stages to every response. One classic example is anger, right? So, and you can transplant those 3 stages to any other type of emotion. But let's take anger, for example, which is a common one, unfortunately. But when someone does something to me that is hurtful, or when something happens to me that shakes my core, that I was not expecting, that gets me out of my comfort zone. So there are 3 stages. Stage number 1 is anger. That's the natural stage. The Tanya doesn't tell you don't be angry. because it understands that's part of the human condition. Yes, it's an emotion. But the question is, what do you do with that emotion? So if you're only functioning based on your animal soul, then anger becomes rage. Divine soul, through the mind, can immediately push down, or at least give perspective to that emotion of anger. The animal soul doesn't know how to give perspective to the emotion of anger, because it resides in the heart and it's just emotional. So it enables the anger to become rage. And that's when it becomes dangerous. But then there's a third stage, and that's even worse than rage. And that is also guided by the animal soul. What's the third stage? Resentment. I keep it in my heart. Grudges. And that's when it becomes very, very destructive. Not just towards the other, but towards myself first. Right? Hatred hurts the hater the most, as they say. So it's true for every emotion. What does the divine soul do? The divine soul says, okay, you're feeling something. I understand. Think about it first. Remember, the divine soul resides here. Think about it. Do you really want to go into this rage? Is it really going to be helpful? Is it really going to be constructive? And that's where the animal soul is guided by the godly soul, where it must be guided by the godly soul. Again, the godly soul that resides primarily here, because the only way to control those emotions indeed is by first thinking about them and asking ourselves what will be the circumstance or the consequences. What is indeed the best intellectual way to deal with this? And by the way, in the types with the emotion of anger, again, we can transplant as 3 stages to any other emotion. Try it, you'll see they exist in every emotion. But speaking about anger, in most cases, the divine soul will tell you, don't respond at all. Don't respond at all. Better to take the high road. In the words of King Solomon in the book of Proverbs, Altan ksil beivlato pen tishvelo. Don't answer a fool in his foolishness, lest you become equal to him. You don't answer. But anyway, that's just an example to best illustrate what the Tanya here is speaking about. And we can continue on page 225. Of course, I'd love to hear your voices. That's what it's all about. We need your disagreements, your comments, your input. That's what learning is all about. But there isn't any as of yet. We can continue. Yeah, okay, we'll continue. 225. Does anyone want to read?
I'll read.
Please, Margot. Thank you.
Okay. The godly soul also has a residence in the heart, where its midot, emotional faculties, reside. But this expression of the godly soul remains latent until aroused by the brain. In the right ventricle, in which there is no blood, as is written, the heart of the wise man is on the right. The heart of the wise man is to his right, says King Solomon, and that of the fool is to his left. Man is not a homogeneous creature, but a dichotomous being. His heart, too, is divided. In the right ventricle of the heart, where the feelings of holiness are located, are the desires of the godly soul. And these do not manifest themselves in the heart in a direct and spontaneous manner, but by means of certain processes in the brain. Then in the left ventricle, which holds the blood, that is the animal soul, is the home of the feelings and desires that derive from the person's physical animal side, from the klipa in man. Because the heart is not one, but can contain contradictory drives, a person is perpetually faced with the question of where his true heart lies. Where does his heart of hearts, his ultimate self, reside, to the right or to the left?
Right. Let's just elaborate on that, because obviously you may ask the question, well, biologically, it's not true. The heart resides in the left part of the body, not the right. So what is King Solomon saying here? The heart of a wise man is to his right. There is no heart to the right side of the body, right? It's only to the left. But what King Solomon is really referring to, of course, this is much more metaphorical than anything else. And that is that the wise man doesn't include all these emotions, all this blood in his heart. He knows how to separate the blood, all the noise, from from his emotional responses to life. Therefore, his heart is, so to speak, to the right, without all the blood, without all the flow, without all the noise. The heart of the wicked, or the heart, what does he say, of the fool, sorry, is to his left. Because the fool, what does the fool do? When he responds with his heart, he brings in all the blood. He brings in all the noise. He brings in all the chaos. And that's not how a wise man responds. And that's really what Rabbi Stein is saying here, quoting this verse, that if you want to be wise, then remember to use a heart that is on the right side. Don't bring all your baggage, all your emotions, all your chaos with it. That's the only way to truly respond with the heart. Now, what is interesting is that King Solomon, of course, Rabbi Steinsaltz here, are not saying that the heart is not important. One must have a heart. We must have joy and passion and enthusiasm. We must have that. But we have to have it in a way that is pure, that is unadulterated, that is egoless, because that's the best way to live, to be wise, in the words of King Solomon. If we fill it up with all of the noise, with all of our baggage, and worse, with all of our ego, that's when it becomes very destructive. You know, that what's interesting is this, that one of the great Hasidic thoughts is that there is the word for king in Hebrew is really an acronym. Word for king in Hebrew is melech, mem lamed chaf. Now, what's interesting is that the Hasidic teachings say that this is an acronym for 3 words. Mem stands for moach, lamed stands for lev, and kaf, which is the 3rd word for melech, kaf, stands for kaved. Moach means brain, lev means heart, and kaved means liver. That's the acronym. And what
liver?
Liver, like the other part of the body, the liver. And what it teaches is that if you want to be a king, if you want to act royally, make sure that these are the priorities. First, the mind is in control, then the heart, and then the liver, and then the rest of the body, so to speak. Now, what's interesting is this. If you have it all upside down, if it's your body, your ego first, say, then your heart, and only then does the brain come into play. So if you reverse that acronym, you have kaf, lamed, mem, which really spells out the word klum, which means nothing. Then you're nothing. Then your impact is nothing. Then your existence, your life will be nothing, because you have it all reversed. So if you want to act royally, first be a king, first act through the mind, then the heart, and then the liver, and then the rest. And that's really what the Tanya is saying here. The heart is important, but make sure the mind, in a way, sucks out all of the ego out of it, and all of your chaos out of it, and then you can respond with it. And then the heart, and then the rest. But that's how to act royally. I feel like I'm monologuing here, so please feel free to speak your minds and disagree, argue, add your ideas. Please, Gary, go for it.
So sometimes it sounds like an either or. I know it's not between the heart and the mind and what we're talking about. I'm not sure what my question is. It's I'll just leave it at that.
No, it's a great point, and I think this is what you're referring to. Maimonides speaks about this quite a bit, and that was maybe alluded in that line that says that what we read at the top of the page here, that the godly soul also has a residence in the heart, but this expression of the godly soul remains latent until aroused by the brain. So, in other words, you have 2 types of emotional responses. One emotional response is that's triggered by the heart. And that's the emotional response that we do not want to have, according to the time. But then there's an emotional response that's aroused by the brain. And that's the emotional response we do want to have. That's the way to use the heart. Now, what I mean by that, Maimonides speaks about this in regards to awakening our love for God. He actually asks the question, which is a good question, but it relates to this, of, in the Shema, the first paragraph of the Shema, we say, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol mo'odecha," that we should love our God with all our might and with all our soul and with all our heart. Now, the question is, it's a good question. How can you impose someone to love something? Right? Love is a matter really of that's beyond us. If I click with this person, I click with this person. If I don't, I can respect this person. You can't force me to love someone I don't love. Same with food. If I don't like tomatoes, you can't force me to love tomatoes. What you can't tell me love. I can respect the nutrition benefits of tomatoes, but you can't force me to love tomatoes, right? So Maimonides asked the same question. How can you force me to love God? If I don't love God, I can respect God, but don't tell me v'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. And there are two answers that Maimonides provides, but that both answers speak about how the brain can trigger the heart. And that's the ultimate emotional response. That's the ultimate love we should have towards God, and by the way, towards every other person that we're in a relationship with, or even those that we're not in a relationship with, we should love. How so? So one response is that use your mind first, meditate on God's creation. And by meditating on God's creation, look at Camelback Mountain this morning. Look at the clouds falling off the heavens on the beautiful valley we have here. Or look at the cactus next to you. If you meditate on that, it will arouse your love for God. You'll say, wow, there must be a creator to those awesome sceneries, and I'm in love. But that comes from the mind, right? That's love that comes from the mind. Another one, which is more mystical, Maimonides says, well, yes, I can force you to love something that is outside of you, but I can force you to love something that is inside of you, because all that we'll need is for you to open up your eyes and you'll realize who you truly are. We're divine. We have a divine soul. So we can force you to love, God can force us to love ourselves. It's a part of us. So that's a deeper, but again, that comes also through the mind, through the recognition, through the awareness, and maybe even through the contemplation and meditation, that we possess a divine soul, and that will arouse our love. So speaking of the brain versus the heart, you're right. There's not one versus the other, but one is used to awaken the other, and that's the brain. That must be used to awaken the heart. The heart can't be used to awaken the brain. If it goes that way, then again, klum, then you're nothing. A lot of people, the Talmud says that reshaim libam birshutam, that the wicked, their heart possesses them. The heart guides them. The heart convinces them of lies. That's how powerful the heart is. And the brain follows through. Now, because the heart is a confusing world. It's a chaotic world. But if you let the heart be at the driver's seat, then the brain follows through, and then the brain becomes all confused. But if you separate the heart first, and then you use your brain, and you meditate, and you contemplate, and by the way, that's what we do before prayer. It says that even Jewish law encourages people to really meditate on God before prayer, so that we can come to prayer and really launch ourselves into the state of ecstasy after understanding, after meditating God, as Maimonides was pointing out before. But when we come to exercising our brain power in order to connect to something, or in order to know how to respond to something, then our heart will follow through in the best of ways. So you're right, it's not one or the other, but it's the brain that must trigger the heart, and not the other way around. I hope that's what you were referring to, though.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, no, thank you. All right, thank you, Gary, for that. Anyone else? No, okay. All right, so let's continue on with this next paragraph. So speaking about the heart that is on the right side, which means that is egoless, chaos-less. So although the animal soul, does anyone want to continue to read, or Margot? Anyone?
Sure, I'll continue. Nobody else wants to. Okay, so although the animal soul is essentially instinctive and the godly soul is primarily perceptive, this is not to say that the emotional self is exclusively klipa. For the godly soul also has another point of residence in the human being, in addition to its abode in the mind, the right ventricle of the heart. The human being has fundamental desires that are of a holy rather than an animal nature, which express themselves as the feelings of the heart.
Right. Let's stop there. So again, this goes back to what you were saying, Gary, too. It's not that the heart is not important, but it must be guided by the brain. I do want to mention something that comes to mind, but the Baal Shem Tov says something quite powerful. This is the founder of the Hasidic movement, who would say that everything in the world, everything can be created without passion. Everything. I can create this cup without passion. I can create this book without passion. We can create technology without passion. Doesn't mean that, you don't need passion sometimes, but things can be created without passion, except for one thing. Except for one thing. Do you know what? What can't be created without passion in this world? Can anyone guess? Okay. Fine.
What can't be
Love
created?
for God.
Can't
Yes.
everything can be created without passion, except for one thing. So what can't be created without passion?
Love of
Love
God
for God. Yeah.
or
Oh,
a
okay.
person?
Love of God. Fine. I mean, I can technically love God just by doing what he tells me to do without passion. I can do mitzvahs without passion. Give tzedakah without passion. If
Yeah,
love is an action, I can do that without passion.
true.
But the Baal Shem Tov would say one thing cannot be created without passion, and that's life itself. Life. In order to create life, you need passion. And it's true not just in physical lives, creating babies, but it's true in spiritual life, that I cannot live a meaningful life. I cannot truly live without passion. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev would say that in one of the prayers of the high holidays, we ask that God should give us lechaim velo lamavet, for life and not for death. And he would tweak that last word around. He would say that what we're truly asking God is not just life and not death, but it says lechaim velo lamavet. If you take the word lamavet, which means to death, send us to life, not to death, lamavet, and you split that word into two, you have the words lo mavet, which means not dead. And what we're really asking God is send us to true life with that passion, right? Not just to a life that is in which we are in a state of being just not dead. Because you can divide humanity into two different groups. Those that are alive, truly alive, that have that passion. And those you can't really say they're alive, they're just not dead. They're floating. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev would say that this prayer really refers to asking God, please give us that passion, give us that life. Let us be truly alive, not just not dead. La mavet, lo mavet. But that's the idea, right? So we need the heart. We need the heart to truly be alive. But again, the heart must be guided by the brain. If it's guided by the brain, then the heart also is most effective in helping us live, truly live. One of the great Hasidic Jews of our generation, passed away about 20 years ago, maybe a little more, 25 years ago, was a man who suffered tremendously in the Gulag, in the Soviet Union. He was sent to Siberia just for practicing Judaism. His name was Mendel Futterfass. I mentioned him here at CBT many times. He suffered tremendously. By the way, he never knew his father. When they called him up to the Torah, they would call him up as Menachem Mendel ben Menachem Mendel. Why? Because his father died when his mother was pregnant with him. So he was named after his own father. But anyway, he had a really horrific life. And Mendel Futterfass eventually came out of prison, and many, many stories about him. But he was a man of true passion, guided by the brain, obviously. And he had many students. He moved to Israel and thousands would flock to him. And one day he went to a river stream and he took his students there. And he said to them, look at the river stream. There are many fish swimming in this river stream, right? And then he asked them, do you know which fish are alive in that river stream? Do you know which fish are certainly alive in this river stream? And they said, no. And he said, the fish that are swimming against the stream. The fish that are swimming with the stream, maybe they're dead, and the stream is pushing them forward. but the ones that are swimming against the stream are the ones that are alive. And he concluded, if you truly want to be alive in life, use your brain. Ask yourself, am I just doing something because everyone is doing it? Sometimes the heart lets you do that. Just, go with the flow, as they say. Everyone's doing it, so you do it too. Why not? But the brain will ask you the question, are you just a dead person floating with the stream? Or are you really alive, going against the stream? Because the brain is not going to allow you to do this. So, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
And then
No, please.
It reminds me of a Bob Dylan song.
Okay, go for it.
And in this is like, he wrote this a long time ago. And one of the lines in the song is, those not busy living are busy dying.
Oh, yes.
I don't think Bob Dylan studied the Talmud, but maybe. I mean, he has a Jewish background.
I think he did. He does have a Jewish background. I know he had a little bump along the way where he went to another religion, but he came back strong and alive. In fact, I know a dear family whose daughter became more and more observant. She wanted to go to shul on Yom Kippur. And her parents had decided, no, we're going to go visit Bob Dylan's house where he grew up in somewhere in Minnesota. Where?
Hibbing, Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right. So she said to them, I'm not going with you. So they went and visited Bob Dylan, and lo and behold, the synagogue she went to, Bob Dylan was there. At the end of the day, she told the parents, you went to visit his home. I had Bob Dylan right next to me. So he has some deep connection. By the way, that line is also in my favorite movie of all time, Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Where that banker is in prison, and then he has all these dreams. He wants to move to Mexico, escape prison. And then he tells Morgan Freeman, he says, because Morgan Freeman at one point says, what, are you crazy? You're in prison. You're in Shawshank. No one comes out of Shawshank. And he says to him, well, that life boils down to this. You're either busy living or busy dying. That's right. But that's true. That's true. Now, how can you stay busy living? Through the brain. The brain will ask you the question, are you doing things just because everyone else is doing them? Or are you doing them because you're a servant of God, or you have a purpose to live, or you're following the call of your soul, of your divine soul? That's how you can stay busy living.